Hey there YouTube, Travis and Will here. So today we're going to be rebuilding a Puch e50. We're going to open this video up with more or less everything you need, I'd say. First, you're going to need a Puch e50 that needs rebuilt. This one's all original. I had thrown the 50 kit on it just for fun, but it's time for a rebuild. It's getting the Treats 1.5 version 70 kit. You'll need a Puch e50. You will need a flywheel puller. Please don't be using rubber mallets on this. You'll also need a clutch puller, which is in here. I'll show you how to use that. You'll need your 3 seals. You'll need your 4 bearings. These are the C203, and one has a NR after it because it's got a snap ring. We have our new cylinder, our new head, and the cylinder has the piston, circlips, wrist pin, all that fun stuff in it already. If you're doing a stock rebuild, you can just reuse your own stuff. We'll talk about honing your stock cylinder after you're done with that. We have a new crankshaft. We have new gaskets for that. We have new circlips for the engine, new studs. We have a bunch of nice stainless steel bolts because they use flathead screws on the underside of these Puchs. We have Dremel bits to do our case matching, but once again that's something specific to our kit. Number 115 and 117, bigger one to do the start and the cleanup with the smaller one. Just a representation here, we're expecting that you have your own set of crescent wrenches, socket set. Up here, this is starting to get into Will's territory right here. Talk a little about this.
Yeah, I got my Harbor Freight Pittsburgh bearing puller and separator. This is you know, it's not the best made tool in the world, but it works really well actually. Especially for these E50s because they got one bearing that's right up against the crank. It's tough to get behind, so you can't use a regular little jaw puller. So this is a good tool to have around.
And this is also Will's. Lucky to have him as a roommate. This is his also Harbor Freight, right?
Oh yeah, Harbor Freight. I think this is also Pittsburgh.
Not marked! But this is the impact screwdriver. This I'm going to put on as a must-have.
Oh yeah.
Trying to do the flathead screws on the bottom of an E50 case without one of these, you're going to be very, very frustrated. I'd almost put that as mandatory. Got a little bit of some junk 2-stroke oil left over to help lube up the piston when we put it all back together. Have a torque wrench right here so we can get everything to spec. The Puch service manual so we can look up the torque specs, though not totally necessary. Good old shop rag, aka someone's old shirt. Have our cookie sheet, oven mitt right here because we're going to be putting the bearings in the oven at 350 and heating them up so they slide on the crankshaft real nice. Rubber mallet and Puch seat post. I forgot about that. Rubber mallet and Puch seat post to help install the bearings, and then a piston stop right there so we can help take the engine apart a little bit easier. And I think, yes, almost forgot.
Also Harbor Freight Pittsburgh brand circlip pliers with interchangeable heads. These are not very nice. But with the tiny circlips on the E50, it won't be a problem. But if you're trying to work with some bigger circlips, actually the pliers themselves will bend.
Oh, good to know.
So if you can get something nicer, go for it. But if not, this will work. And then this is actually Permatex Tack and Seal. Most people use Yamabond. It's the Yamaha brand stuff for sealing 2-stroke cases. There's also Honda Bond and a bunch of other stuff. But basically you want to make sure you have something that says it resists oil and gasoline, especially gasoline, because most sealers, especially silicone sealers, don't resist gasoline. So you need to make sure you have something that's resistant to gasoline.
We would have gotten Honda Bond or Yamabond, but the places that sold them were totally closed Saturday evening. So here we are. Okay, so before we begin, I just want to make a little disclaimer here. This isn't the end-all of a Puch e50 rebuild video. This is the 4th one that Will and I have done, right?
Yeah, 4th engine we've rebuilt.
So we might not get our terminology totally right. This video is really useful if you're putting your engine back together and you don't remember quite the order things went. You can see how it came from the factory. It's also important to use your other resources. There's 2 really awesome photo guides already out there as of the time of this video for rebuilding an E50, plus searching around on the forums and the Moped Army Wiki. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this, and this is a really popular moped engine, so hopefully it can help you out. Alright, so first thing we're going to do before we tackle the clutch and electric side, we're going to take our spark plug out and put our piston stop in. Spark plug comes out. Piston stop goes in. So flywheel cover is just 2 flathead screws. Helps as you're going through this to kind of bag and label all your screws. That's a good idea. Will and I have not been one for good ideas.
Nope.
Alright, so go ahead and take your flywheel nut off with your piston stopped in. And of course it's going to rotate until it hits that stop. That, and then your nut will thread off like so. Great. So now's the time we're going to take our flywheel puller tool, back it out all the way like this. Then you're going to go ahead and screw it into the threads on here, like so. And it's going to rotate all the way around again until it hits the piston. Then you screw in this part. Thanks for holding the engine wheel. Now we're going to switch to our 19mm socket. We're going to tighten this time. So as we tighten this nut, it pulls the flywheel out. Flywheel puller. Now it's going to sound like you broke it, but you didn't. That. Now, look at this. Here we go. It's got magnets on it, so it's going to feel a little funky pulling it out. There's your Puch flywheel puller. And there's your stator and your electrics. Fun fact, or fun tip I should say, since this is a big old magnet, you can stick some screws in here and it'll hold them in there while you're working, help you not lose things. So we go ahead and take this out. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do the opposite side of the motor. We're going to do the clutch side right here. This is going to be 4 Phillips head screws right here. And if these aren't coming, like these aren't, I found that using a socket with a Phillips head extension on it is really nice. So you'll need something like this when you go to retorque these. And you can use an impact screwdriver on these too, but I like this style guy right here. Okay. And this should just kind of come off here. There's going to be a gasket behind it. If it's red, it's the original gasket. Now, for your clutch right here, so first thing is there's a snap ring that goes all around this. You just got to kind of find where the end of that is. You can compress it with your fingers. Right there. Right there. Like that. That comes out. Then this plate comes out. There's your clutch nut, which we can see. This one's a 17mm nut. You go ahead and loosen it off. It's going to hit the piston stop again. So, like that. And you got a washer behind it too. Okay, so now it's time for us to use our clutch puller. Okay, so your clutch puller is going to look like this. What you're going to do is back this out. You can make this tool. Some people, some really talented people, are actually able to use some people use the handlebar clamps, but most people, when they're trying to do this on their own, some people say they can use the kickstand block right here, and they can make their own clutch puller out of that, which is real handy. But most people buy the tool, or you can make it. This thing is really simple. So what you do is thread it in like so. They don't have to be threaded in a whole lot, they just have to hold themselves there. Then you start screwing this in on the end of the threads. Try to get these two evenly screwed in. Then switch back to our 19 here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and tighten on this, and then once again it's going to pull the clutch out. It's going to sound like you broke it, but that means you did the right thing. Like so, and your clutch will just come on out. Awesome. Just for fun, there's your Puch e50 clutch. If you're putting in performance springs like blue ones or kickstart springs or something, those go here. There's the friction material. This one still looks pretty good actually. There's a little Woodruff key right here. Really important you don't lose that when everything goes back together. There's a slot for it in the clutch right here. If it doesn't come out immediately, just keep an eye on it. Okay, so we can go ahead and take our piston stop out. Okay, so top end disassembly. I'm going to start, you've got 4 head nuts right there. Go ahead and get, I call it a midget socket set. A little socket set like this with an extension makes this job really, really easy. Okay, so once you get your 4 nuts out, your head will just come off like so. There's probably some washers inside the head, watch out for them. Yes, there's definitely some washers in your head. Head gasket's right there, but that's probably stuck to the cylinder, which... Okay, so now when we take the cylinder off, the piston's going to be inside there, so... Oh, also worth mentioning, if one of your cylinder studs comes out or more, it's not a big deal. You can just put those back in and then use the double nut trick. One nut and then another nut pushing on it to get it tightened in down there. Okay, so off your cylinder comes. This time our base gasket stuck on our cylinder. Most of the time though it's going to be on there. It's actually made our job a lot easier because we don't have to scrape any old gasket off there. That's awesome. So now we're going to take off our piston. I'd like to mention that we're definitely catering this to people who are doing stock rebuilds as well. That's all we've been doing up until now. So we're going to go with the idea that you're going to reuse everything. Okay, so first part, you're going to take your circlips out. Now, this is something that if you're not careful, these can fly all the way across your shop floor and you'll never ever find them again. So be ready for that.
But you should use new ones anyway.
Right, you should be using new ones anyway, especially, I mean, if you're rebuilding an engine, especially if it's done 5,000 miles. Actually, the old Puch service manuals said to do your rings every 5,000 miles, believe it or not. But of course, I've seen plenty of engines that are well beyond that have never had their top ends touched. See this little bit sticking up right there? We use our needle nose pliers to kind of push in and then pull out. So what you're going to do is get the needle nose pliers around that bit. Okay. And then like that. There's one circlip. There's circlip number 2. Awesome. Now, in the middle of the piston is something called a wrist pin. This thing spins around an awful lot and the motor's running. To get this out, I found that the midget socket set, the extension for that works really well. You can use a bolt, screwdriver. Doesn't really matter.
Push it out.
Right. So, you want to be very careful that you don't hit this too hard as to mess up the crank at all. So we'll see. Sometimes you get lucky and you're able to kind of just push these guys out. Usually they're going to put up a lot more of a fight, especially if they've been there for more than 30 years. What I'd recommend, putting little blocks of wood on either side here between the studs and the piston, and then using a rubber mallet and whatever socket extension, whatever you're using to gently tap it out. Be really careful on that one. But anyway, once your wrist pin's most of the way out, your piston's going to come off the top right there. And so now, here is the stock Puch crank. And notice a mistake that a lot of people make when they kit is they don't put a performance crank in, which you can get away with sometimes. But the real problem is that there's a brass bushing up here instead of like a roller bearing. And that when you start getting over 9,500 RPMs, that can go on you. Alright, so we're back on our electric side right here. We're going to take off 3 flathead screws to make the stator come out. Screw 1, 2. The third one is at the bottom right there. Take note of your Woodruff key right there also while you're at it. Okay, and then this will wiggle free. Now, there's a little rubber guard right here so water doesn't get down in your electrics. So first you can kind of just...
Gotta get the sleeve off. There.
Okay, cool. Now, see if we can get this piece of rubber free here.
There we go.
Okay, cool. I wonder if we just pull the... Yeah, now you're thinking. Alright, so let's pull these wires through here. Cool, and your rubber thing will come out now at this point.
Try not to destroy it because you'll probably want to put it back on.
Yeah. Oh yeah, before I forget, this kickstand on the underside here has 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3. I'll go ahead and take those off. There's going to be some grease under here. There's supposed to be grease under there. It helps the kickstand, so expect that. So this all comes away, and that's your grease right there. And there's your block and your kickstand. Okay, so stock rebuilders, you can kind of ignore this a little bit, but because we're putting a 70cc kit on it, we're going to go ahead and match the transfers from the engine case to what is on the cylinder. So to do that, we're going to case match. So this involves, first we're going to measure. So we're going to take this base gasket, slide it on here, and then color in with a Sharpie. Then we'll use the Dremel bits to Dremel out a little bit bigger. This is kind of like, some people will skip this putting on a kit and they really lose out. So this base gasket's a little bit thicker. Be careful sliding it on. You can kind of see how it's going to be bigger. Lift it off there for a sec. Okay, cool. Yeah, that gasket's not cut quite as accurately as I'd like it to be. Okay.
Why don't we just slide the actual cylinder on? Actually, that gasket's too small. That's the problem.
Do you want to line up the gasket on here?
Yeah.
Okay, stop it. So, just keep in mind, not all gaskets are cut totally perfectly. So I lined up the holes on this one, and it looks like the transfers are bigger than the gasket is actually cut. So don't just go blindly drawing Sharpie on a gasket or around the gasket. We're going to cut this slightly bigger to match the transfers there. Thanks to the master scissor skills of Will, this looks a lot better. We're going to go ahead and, we have some gasket paper lying around. We're going to cut a new one for this real quick, but it's important that you make your gasket cuts bigger if they need to be. Cool. So we went ahead and pressed our new base gasket down on there. Cut open a lot more if you haven't noticed. So it's worth it to double check that against the cylinder. So I'm going to take the good Sharpie, the one with the fine point, and kind of, if this one has any juice left in it. So now we lift up on our base gasket. We have it marked where we need to take away with the Dremel. There's a circlip.
It's holding the clutch bell on. So I'm gonna try to get that with these pliers. There's these 2 little points on the ends of the pliers, and you want to get those into the 2 little holes on the circlip. Then when you squeeze, it'll pull the clip apart, and then you can lift it off. In theory.
Zoom in on that.
These pliers are not the best, so it actually makes it a lot harder than it should be. There we go.
So it's helpful when you do this, you place things in the order that you took them off, so when you go to reassemble, it's a lot easier. So put that clip right there. Then your clutch bell comes out. There's a washer in there.
Nice big thick one. The circlip goes on top of that. And here, I think, yep, there's another. There's the bushing here, crank bushing. The crank usually has the bushing, I think, but usually it stays on. This time the washer came off with the bushing.
Huh.
Yeah, there's another nice big thick washer on this other side.
Maybe
But it held onto the brass bushing on the crank. There we go. So this is the inside of the crank. This is the outside.
How that goes.
And that's it for this side. Well, nope, I lied.
One more circlip.
One more circlip. And then, yeah, this might be okay. We should do this when the cases are split.
Okay.
That's a tough one to get to.
The other thing to do on the other side is the gear.
So there's one circlip holding this on. Again, just get your pliers in there. Yeah, see these you might even see on the video these pliers bend. Good enough.
All right, so that's for our gear, and then the gear.
This gear should pull off. This is also, you're also going to have to do this if you're gearing your bike differently, if you're putting a different front sprocket on it. And there's going to be another circlip. That is one dirty looking seal. There's the other one. That's definitely the same size.
Cool.
I'll put it on the other side though, just for fun. That should be it.
Awesome.
Before we want to split the cases.
Cool. So, split cases. Flip this guy on its underside again. Okay, so we moved this over to our workbench because if we were pounding on that table, it would knock all of our things off of it. There's a bunch of flathead screws on the bottom here. Some are short, some are long. For the most part, you are going to need an impact screwdriver for this, like I mentioned earlier, or else you're going to be pretty upset. So Will's got his Harbor Freight screwdriver right here.
Make sure it's set to loosen. I usually just do this, I just push down on it, and you can see the bit turn counterclockwise. So that means when you hit it, it's going to loosen. Might as well just start with this one. There we go. Okay.
Now we can get a rubber mallet.
Yeah.
Oh no, wait. I'm so stupid. There's a place you hit. Right there, I think.
Yeah, that's true. You can hit that. There.
Cool. Helps if you have a roommate who, whenever his comforters get dirty, he just throws them down here, and so it has to be nice and soft. Alright, you've cracked cases. So this is the first time this E50 has seen the insides, have seen the light of day since 1977. I should probably take the top off, shouldn't I? Ta-da! Alright, so first we're going to take a look at our crankshaft here.
So, this crank's still in decent shape. You know, it still spins fine. What you want to check, I mean, there's a few things you can check. You can check the run out, which we're not going to do. And you can also check the side clearance, the amount of play side to side in the big end bearing, which you'd do by putting feeler gauges down there and, you know, moving it to the side, see how far it moves to each side. And the specs for that are in the Puch service manual if you want to check that. The most important thing is that there's no play in the big end bearing so that the connecting rod moves towards and away from the crankshaft. You shouldn't, if you hold the crank still, you should not be able to move the connecting rod up and down in this position. And you can't, which is a good thing. If it does, then your big end bearing's definitely bad. And if you have a press, you could try doing it yourself.
You need tons and tons of force to press in a new bearing, right?
Yeah. Or, more likely, you'd want to send it off somewhere.
There's a couple sources in the moped community. Cool.
But you can just lift that out of the cases. There you go. can also, should just be able to come right out. You might have to pull on it a little bit, but...
So there's the seal, and then...
Snap ring. This is not attached to the bearing.
That just
hangs out in the case right there. And then there's a bearing on this side and a bearing on this side, which we'll need to pull off.
And it's important to remember which side has the, for this one, which side has the snap ring, which is
the clutch side.
Yes.
Has the snap ring bearing. You can tell by the groove in the case here. Okay, so you can take off this seal too. Other seals hid behind this bearing. And to even get this bearing off, you do have to take off another clip.
That's their clip from earlier.
That we couldn't get to because it was too far down inside the case.
Not enough grease on your hands?
I know. I gotta use the comforter. Alright.
You have to keep that in the, alright.
No.
And this is also on the clutch side. We kind of messed this all up. Okay, that's that. Alright, here's the clutch side. This is closest into the crank.
Sweet.
Now we're gonna work on pulling these bearings. Alright, so we got a nice Harbor Freight bearing puller already set up. There's instructions in the box if you want to know how to set it up. Where should we fidget? Okay. But you want to get it around the bearing, then you can tighten these down. Especially, this is the trickiest bearing to get off because it's right up against the webs of the crankshaft.
There's not enough room.
Yeah, so a jaw puller, there's no way you could get a jaw puller behind this. That's why you need this tool. For these other, well, for this bearing, you could definitely use a jaw puller. For this one, you could. For this one, probably not. For this one, no.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning that people have rebuilt E50s with just 2 screwdrivers.
Yeah, you can do that.
But this is definitely nicer, and you're not going to mess anything up.
Easier too.
Easy, yeah.
You know, that one side's on the bearing, this other side's not.
Oh, it slipped off.
Yep. This bearing is tough. This one's not nice. Those are not the right size. Alright, so we're just going to tighten down on this 17mm socket. This should pull the bearing right off. It's spinning the crank, that's okay though. There you can see the bearing. That'll be a good thing to not include.
Oh, I think.
Oh, we'll edit that out.
Yeah.
Well, we got the bearing off, right?
Yep.
That's what's
oh
important.
yeah, the bearing's gone.
Oh, perfect.
Not how you want to take yours off, though. Don't drop your crankshaft.
It's still good.
Yeah, but just don't drop your crankshaft. We're not using this one though. So.
The reason you don't want to drop your crankshaft or beat it with a metal hammer is that tolerances on it are so precise that you can mess it up. Of course, some person will comment on this video and say, "Oh, it's a moped crankshaft. It's fine."
And it probably is.
It probably is, but it's just best not to take the risk.
Or drop it, like I just did.
Or leave your thing of sockets open.
So you lose all your nice little screwdriver bits.
Bearing number 2 on the crankshaft.
This one's got the seal behind it, but that's okay. You're going to destroy this seal, probably fit in the bearing extractor through there, but you're using new seals, right? Yes?
Yes, we are using new seals. You're using new
you
seals.
should too. If you don't, that's actually kind of stupid.
You're going to pull apart your entire engine and not replace some $10 seals that are 30 years old and dried out.
Some people don't replace bearings. If you don't, then whatever. I mean,
there's no harm that can come from it. Yeah.
Um,
That's the hope. Will and I are really stressing tools on this one, unlike our timing video, which we were a little more lax about, because if you're rebuilding your engine, we hope that you're putting in the effort to do it right.
Yes, a lot of things on a moped you can do using really simple tools,
Which is
including this.
The beauty of it, yeah.
But if you really want your rebuild to last, if you want to do a good job, you should really get the tools. And they also make it so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
I really should set that on something.
On the oven mitt.
Another thing I should mention is you are tightening the nut on the end here.
They'd find out pretty quick if they just loosened it and just came up.
Yeah. There we go.
Awesome. Just pull the bearing right off.
Not dropping the crankshaft. There's the one with the snap ring.
And that seal can just...
Oh, yep, and then that nasty seal, that one's always real bad.
Good seals.
So actually, if you're replacing seals, at this point, you're done with pulling bearings off. Because you can get to both the seal on the main gear without pulling off this bearing. But if you're replacing bearings too,
You should.
then, yes, then we're going to also pull these two off. Bearing number 3. That was an easy one. The ones on the main gear usually are going to be a little easier to get off because that doesn't get as hot. Alright, last one. Really, you should tighten all this down real good, but this is working fine. That would be bad. There we go. It's not a good sound, but that's how you know it's actually pulling it off. Stubborn one.
I hear it coming.
Oh yeah, it's coming. It's just
Dragging the whole way.
yep.
It's getting better for sure.
Yay! Here's your last one.
4 bearings, 3 seals. Now, it's also worth mentioning, Will and I don't have experience with these engines, but as Puch engines evolved over the years, if you're rebuilding an E50 from the 90s, it might have a different number of bearings and seals, but this is what is probably most common out there as far as a bearing and seal setup is. So anyway, down here, we're putting in 2 screws in the front. They're going to be short ones. So we're going to do, this is our very first time doing case matching. So it's marked on there with Sharpie what we need to do. The biggest risk is going too far on the flywheel side and hitting where this screw goes down, because that gets pretty close to where that is. This one's also a risk, but not so much. So we'll see. Obviously, anything we do is going to be better than nothing. But the way I understand it is that this has to be smooth, polished, and not polished, but like
Not bird.
not burred.
We also decided to put the 2 back screws in the cases just because they were still a little crooked with the 2 front screws in. I think now this is looking a good bit better.
So we've got the engine and the vise here for the case matching, 2 pieces of wood, so that I don't hurt the case and slash it. It gets on there better. Starting to Dremel here. These bits go through this stuff mighty fast, so you gotta be really careful.
You might want to angle it a bit.
Definitely. So I'm gonna try to angle it like this. This is our flywheel side. This is the risky side right here.
I think we can go all the way to the Sharpie as long as you angle it.
Okay, because oh, I see, the screw is right there. So we're almost done here. It's important, the way I understand it, that we want just a smooth transition. So I'm going to take the wire wheel here. The actual tool we just use the big one. This is really smooth as is, but I'm going to take this and see if I can smooth it up anymore.
We did it pretty mild. We didn't go too deep in the cases, but it's honestly, it's still a fairly mild kit.
Yeah. If you look at pictures on the Moped Army Wiki, that guy did a much better, more involved case matching job. You should definitely look to that for advice more than us, I would say. This is our first time. So this is the result of our job. This is, again, as far as we wanted to go. Next stage is going to be washing the cases. If you're doing a stock rebuild and you're not case matching for any reason, just skip right on to this. So we'll show you how we're going to do it. Everybody likes to clean their cases a little differently. So we'll take her out of the vise, go outside. Okay. So some people will put their cases in a dishwasher. I've just found it's the easiest to pressure wash them.
If you don't have a pressure washer, take them to the car wash.
Oh, that's a good idea too. So it was about 10 minutes of pressure washing. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you want to go further, you can use engine degreaser and stuff like that to make them absolutely spotless. But the big things is that all the metal shavings are gone from our case matching. Okay, so just as we took these old bearings off, we're going to go ahead and put the new bearings on our crank. We're going to be moving kind of quickly here. We're going to go preheat our oven to heat it up. And then we're going to go ahead and quickly get all the bearings on before they cool down. Okay, so we're going to go to our oven here. We're going to set it at 350 for a preheat, and we'll need that in a second. Good, so now if you're doing a stock rebuild and you're reusing your old crankshaft, just imagine this is it. This is a Rito crank because this is getting kitted, and I wanted to do this. So before we put the bearings on, there's one seal that has to go on. And that's on the, that's the flywheel side?
This is the clutch side.
The clutch side, okay.
Yep, this one seal here.
And the seal faces inward.
The
open part.
The open part.
Yeah.
Faces inward. There's a huge debate about it. But
that's what we're doing in this video.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna put these bearings in here for like 10 minutes. So the idea is the heat will make the bearings expand. Some people will also say to put the crank in the freezer, but if I was doing a stock rebuild, I'd do that. Some of the more hardcore people say that the condensation that forms on the crank after putting it in the freezer will cause it to rust when it turns to water, but we'll see. I'm not going to do that with the Rito crank though.
Just slide it on first and then we'll flip it. Alright, we gotta get it down a little more. Okay. Seat post. And hammer / rubber mallet.
Hammer, rubber mallet.
Perfect.
Okay.
There's a bearing. Snap ring bearing.
I got it.
Snap ring goes out. Well, hey, what can you do? There you go. You do it. Perfect. I guess maybe a couple more wax wouldn't hurt it. Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. Main gear. This is why speed is important.
Keep it going. Stop.
We're at the circlip?
Yep.
Cool. Final one.
This is tricky. You gotta hold it on there just right. think that's good. Yep.
They all spin. Cool. That's the bearing install. So the more that you have them heated and the quicker you do it, the less pounding you have to do.
We put the bearings on the new crank. Good.
Oh no! What a mistake.
Let's see. We already put one seal on the clutch side. Let's see, this one will go right here on the main gear.
And there's the crankshaft.
And then that seal is gonna go on the flywheel side of the.
Give it a little space.
Yeah,
there's
that's the tough one.
There's that oil passage.
Yeah, maybe put it on a little further. It only has to be a tiny bit of space. Yeah, that'll do just fine. There's an oil passage here. You can see it in the case.
That groove right there.
So it helps to have a little space in between this seal and this bearing, because that's how this bearing gets lubricated. Okay. All right, one thing we forgot.
We just gotta pull the seal.
Yeah, pull the seal off. There's a snap ring that goes on there. It'll be loose until you actually set it in the case. There it goes. Just helps to keep the seal, I think, from getting pushed too far in. Sorry. And there's your crankshaft.
Snap ring bearing goes in that groove. Looking good.
Yeah, I think looks good.
Could maybe pull the seal out a hair more.
Okay. Yeah.
Make sure that bearing gets lubricated there. That feels good. Cool.
Come on. Oh, it got nice and bent. Let me use a screwdriver on it. Okay, here it goes.
Oh, I get it. The circlips hold the gear right there.
Yep. So that slides back against the one, and then you put on another in front of it to hold it exactly in place.
Kind of crazy how that seal is just exposed like that.
I know.
Spins good.
This one I'm going to need a screwdriver to push on the rest of the way, I think. Yeah, thanks. There we go.
Cool.
That holds that in. Yep, so our main gears on, the front sprocket is on nice and tight. Then, one more before we put the cases together is, here we go. This goes on and helps hold on this bearing with the snap ring. Not sure why we really need it, because the bearing has the snap ring to hold it in, but it was there. So we can put it back on. Come on. The one nice thing about these is you can flip them around, and then I'm going to actually use these one more time to pull the circlip back together a bit, just to help keep it real tight on there. That should do it. Now you're going to need to use some sealer on one of the case halves to help seal them shut, because there's no gasket. So we got our tack and seal here. I'm going to go ahead and put a few blobs. This stuff's kind of tough to work with. I'm just going to sort of glob some on right now, and then I'll spread it around and make it look all nice with this plastic bag.
Is there any reason you need to worry about the screw holes?
Nah, you can get it in the screw holes.
Okay. Just curious.
But the most important place not to get it, yes, don't get sealer in here, in this groove, which is the oiling port. So you can actually see on this side, you can see kind of the impression left by it. Right here. Try not to get sealer right in there. I know it's kind of tricky, but try not to do it because you want that to be as open as possible. And if you get a little bit on the inside of the cases, it's not really a big deal. Just don't smear it all over. Alright, so now we're going to put the two case halves together. It's probably easiest to put the one without all the stuff in it on top of the one with all the stuff in it. It's hardest to get it around the main gear, because it's huge. Alright, once you're around that, pretty much good. Just kind of help press them together. You don't have to press them all the way together. The screws will get them the rest of the way. There we go, now we're ready to put in the screws. These four, if you can get on top there, these four are long, and then this one is also long, and the rest are going to be short. Getting these in with the screwdriver, and just get them hand tight with the screwdriver, because then we're going to use a torque wrench to tighten them down fully. And I'm just making a couple passes here.
This is why it's nicer to not do flat heads.
So yeah, you're gonna get a little sealer that goops out the sides. It's really not that big of a deal at all. It's just cosmetic, except maybe in here, especially since we just, you know, cut these out a little bit, we want to clean up our transfers.
Okay. So we're going to go and put our clutch stuff back together. Remember, we already got that circlip on there before we put the cases back together. Now it's that bushing, right? That big guy.
It actually, I think it goes on the inside of this clutch bell. So it's not, you know, you can just, oops, you can just put it in there. We got one washer. So these are actually different sizes, believe it or not. Nobody knows why they have to be. But this one is wider. This washer, well, it probably has to do with the crankshaft taper. Washer, then bushing. And then, okay, and then clutch bell, good. Then washer. Then circlip. Okay, I'm gonna put this circlip in. I don't have the right head on these pliers, that's okay. It's real close. And then I'm just gonna push it in the rest of the way with a screwdriver. If I can get these pliers off. Right. Yeah, actually, it's very close to being in there, but not quite. Just gonna push it in the rest of the way with that screwdriver. There we go. That's on there, good. Alright. Yeah, and that keeps the clutch bell from slipping off.
If it doesn't spin perfectly easy, it's okay. It's still new bearings, and everything kind of has to right itself.
We're good.
So we're done with circlips?
Yes.
So just go straight down in.
Yeah.
Woodruff key.
Nope, your big woodruff key goes on the clutch side.
Okay.
And then the clutch. Is that key still on there? Good. Okay.
Did I do that right?
I think so. I just want to make sure it slides on. Yeah. Alright.
It's on?
It's on. Its key's working.
Nut goes on.
Yep, the washer. There's a washer. And then nut. And then, well, actually, this is all we can do for now because we don't have our top end on. So we can't tighten down on this all the way. Unless we do this screwdriver. I don't.
Yeah, not on the nice new crank.
Not on the, yeah, not on the new crank.
Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and put our top end back together. First we have our nice base gasket. Custom base gasket.
Make sure you get the connecting rod through it, not on the other side of it.
Okay, now, Treats was nice enough to give us this cylinder with the piston and rings already installed. We'll talk real quick about ring installation here. For your rings, they should be in a place where when they're closed together, they close around that notch right there. Also, it's pretty helpful to check your ring gap before you do it. But once again, this one came pre-installed, so we're just going to rock it. Well, let's talk about rings here. If you're rebuilding an engine, you probably want to change out your piston rings.
And hone your cylinder.
And hone your cylinder. So, this is a Puch high torque piston. It's got the Dykes ring on top. If you don't know true moped agony until you've broken a piston ring that you need to finish your build. Anywho, you can take your old rings off and keep them. You don't have to break them to take them off.
You're just gonna pull apart at the gap. Pull apart laterally, like side to side. Don't try to pull one side up or down. Just get your fingers there in the gap. There. Just pull it over the crown. There's one. This is the Dykes ring. As you can see, well, you can kind of see, it's tough to see. The cross section of it, if you can get on that, is L-shaped.
Yes.
And it goes, and the part of it goes up above the crown of the piston. Gives you higher compression.
Ooh.
And here's a more normal style ring. I think this is an FG style.
And you'll
ring.
find that on regular old Puch pistons.
And the same thing though, you just pull apart and push up. Well, yeah.
There it is. This is the one time we can say that installation is the reverse of disassembly.
Yeah, it's legitimately the exact same thing. Alright, so you're going to pull your ring apart a little bit. It's easier to do this on a table, but for filming it, this works too. Make sure, real quick, make sure it's oriented correctly before you put it on. The locator pin here, see this is on the top of the ring groove in the piston, so don't start installing your ring like this, because then that's wrong. You'll have to do it again. So start like this. It's also easier to do the bottom one first, so you don't have to pull one ring over another ring that's already on there. There you go.
Nice.
And the Dykes ring. And again, don't start putting it on the wrong way.
Ta-da! That's how you'd install new rings. Let's talk about cylinder honing here for a second. Okay, so here's a really fast crash course in cylinder honing.
Alright, we got our cylinder in a vise here, you know, with the cylinder skirt in here between two pieces of wood. Not cranked down too hard, we're not going to be putting a whole lot of force on it. Now a nice, 3-shoe hone and a drill here. Variable speed drill is, I'm going to say good, perhaps a must, because you really don't want to go too fast. You're not going to be spinning like at the speed of a high-speed drill. What else? Honing oil is great, or you can use your gum out 2-stroke oil. It should be fine. It just gives a little lubrication and cooling while you hone. With these 3-shoe hones, they're adjustable, so you want to, adjust it out to a width where the springs will push out against the walls of the cylinder, so you have to compress it a little bit to get it in the cylinder. Like that. What else? Definitely going to want to use a good bit of oil. Like I said, honing oil is better, but we have this. For a real good honing, and especially on a bigger cylinder, a lot of people have something that'll drip oil down in there as you hone. But this really should be fine. For this, just get the cylinder walls nice and coated. Put some oil on your stones. we're just going to be doing a real light honing because the cylinder's in pretty good shape, just to kind of deglaze the cylinder. You can take off, you know, some material honing, but it'll take a while, and it's really not a good way to try to bore out your cylinder.
Right. And you can hone, this is a high torque cylinder, so it's cast iron, and you can hone the Cassell
That's fine.
cylinders, yeah, and you're not going to take that away.
It's you have to be honing for a long time. Like, we're talking about like hours worth of time to get rid of all the Nickel lining. These just cut, you know, very little material away.
You want
make
that
a nice 45-degree crosshatch pattern.
right.
That's why you're not going to go too fast, because the drill's spinning really fast. You would have to go up and down really fast to get that crosshatch pattern. Don't go, you know, don't crawl. Don't go like that. That's not going to really do anything. But you'll see here. You don't have to use too fast of a speed. And you'll have to, you know, move the drill up and down with you know, a fair amount, just so it's not staying in the one place and just creating, you know, horizontal lines in your cylinder. You want to get that 45-degree pattern. So just start out kind of slow, get it going. And you don't really have to go too fast. Just up and down. But see, already you can see a nice, you know, 45-degree crosshatch pattern coming out there. Can you see that on the camera?
It's coming out.
Yep. So that's the basic idea. I'll just do a little more here to get the cylinder in good shape, but that's pretty much the idea. It's not really that hard. Just start out slow, be careful. You're probably not going to hurt anything unless you do something really dumb, which I can't even think of what that would be. And then we might want to add a little more oil now. Oops. This can get messy, especially if you're actually dripping oil down on it. It'll spray out. And the honing oil is a little thinner than this two-stroke oil, so that'll spray around a little more. Am I going out the bottom at all?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Cross hatches.
Yeah, that looks pretty good to me.
Okay, so we're cleaning up here. One thing to mention is that you really should resist the urge to wipe out your cylinder because all those little metal particles in there are going to scratch it up. That nice new hone you just made.
So don't just after you're done just go, oh, stick a rag down in here, wipe it out. No, run it underwater, use a little soap. Just very gently, you know, let it run through, get all the particles and oil out of there.
Then you can coat it with two-stroke oil and put your piston in.
And you should be good to go. It'll help the rings wear in correctly and restore maybe a little lost compression. If the cylinder's glazed, the rings aren't going to really break in at all. They're just going to kind of run along that glaze, so they're not going to really seat as well as you want them to.
Okay, so because Will and I are lazy, and the rings are already in there, we're just going to put the whole cylinder and rings on at one time. First we have our roller bearing to go in. Needle bearing.
Right there. It's not a bushing,
Yeah,
so it's better.
That's what's important. Alright, so we got a brand new wrist pin here. One hand.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'll coat that with some two-stroke oil.
Yeah, this is a part that really helps if you lube it up. Also for installing the piston in the cylinder, that helps too. But it's already in there, so you don't need to worry about that. You don't have to get it dripping. Just get a little film on it. And then install our cylinder. You just get it over the studs, holding up the connecting rod and sliding the wrist pin through.
My thumb's underneath the piston.
Okay.
You might have to ever so lightly tap the piston. Oh.
There we go.
Nice.
Okay.
Cool.
The wrist pin really shouldn't be that hard to put in, unless it's old and worn. Actually, on these Puchs, the wrist pin I don't think would wear out at all hardly, because the bushing would wear out before.
Okay, real quick, 2 extremely important things. Notice our intake is up top here, and that's the part where there's no case screws. That's the top. The exhaust port, circle, and that is on the bottom where the screws are. Also, on your piston, there's going to be an arrow. If it's used, it's probably caked up in carbon. The arrow points towards the exhaust. This is pretty universal. So you can manipulate it once it's in, but what you want to do is grab and then pull, maybe push with your finger to get the circlips in.
I'm going to push the wrist pin in through further.
Maybe a little more room there. Okay. So you can kind of catch one corner, and then you just gotta rotate kind of clockwise.
Sometimes with new ones it can be kind of tough.
Oh yeah. Now, as you can see, that one's in. We want them to both be facing kind of the same way. So the open part, yeah, I'll rotate a little more here. The open part will either face both at the bottom or both at the top. So, oh, it's not quite in. Good eye. Let's give her a little push here. Cool. That's actually pretty good right there. It's open towards the bottom. Let me get the camera a little closer and we'll... It's actually really good.
Yeah.
As you can see, it's open towards the bottom. We'll try and get the other one just like that. And there's our other side. The clutch side can be a little bit more difficult since that's an orientation that doesn't come naturally. So now you can just push your cylinder down. Careful.
Yep.
Excellent. Now we have our head gasket. Oh yeah. Cool. It works. It's alive. Soon.
Really soon.
Head gasket. And then we have the
Make
head.
sure it fits okay. This looks fine.
Yeah. Then we have the cylinder head. Which sometimes the heads have a little marking for... This thing's pretty unidirectional though.
That looks like you can go any which way.
Yeah, sometimes they're a little more specific than that.
Maybe up and down. This looks like a high torque head. And usually this thing is like up and down, I think.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Cool. So now we have our washers and our head nuts. So we have our 4 head nuts.
The washer's on first.
This is trickier than it looks. It's like a big old game of horseshoes.
Sometimes you can use a screwdriver, maybe.
Yeah.
First.
Then your 4 head nuts go. Also will probably require a screwdriver. So I'm going to torque all these to the spec in the Puch service manual. These are important. When I very first built up my blue Puch Maxi, it ran like crap and had air leaks, the base gasket and the head gasket, because I just cranked on it. Now if you've done this a lot and you can feel things out, yeah, you'll probably be fine, but this is really good if you can't do that. And go ahead, tighten down our clutch nut. Actually, Will, could you go grab your torque wrench?
Sure.
It needs a higher spec.
Okay. So we're going to tighten down the clutch side nut to 20 foot-pounds. Yeah. There it is.
So now, this plate goes back on. And your little ring here.
do the...
And while we're over here, we'll put our clutch cover back on. So, and this gasket is actually still pretty good.
Yeah, you have to be careful with the starter clutch lever, because if you install it with it like this, you're not going to be able to pull it. You're going to have to take it back off and install it like that.
Yeah.
This is always one of the trickier
Things to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
He has to be simultaneously pulling this while getting the screws in their respective holes. But with two people, it's a lot easier.
Oh yeah. It's also a lot easier when it's not on the side of the bike. Just get these started.
Perfect.
Awesome. Now I'm going to torque these also. In the past when I haven't torqued these, I've gotten leaks, and getting them all even according to the spec and the service manual seems to help a lot. So before we put our electric side back in, which we're onto right now, this is a good opportunity to clean your points because you can access them really easy right now.
Yep, so these are the points you'd want to clean in here, where they contact when they're closed. You can do it just with a little alcohol and a cloth or some really, really fine sandpaper. And then if this stator looks incredible, but if it's rusted here, on the sides of the magnets, or if the inside of the flywheel is rusted at all, you can sand that off, and then you should get a much stronger
Spark.
Sure.
Cool. Alright, so that drops down in, and you follow your wires through where the wires go.
It's a lot easier if you don't have that rubber thing in yet.
Yeah, I'll be putting the rubber thing in at the very end. And when you're doing this side, please don't forget to put your woodruff key in. You will regret it later. And this goes over the crank, and then we've got our 3 screws.
And we're gonna try to get the timing decently close right now.
Before we put the flywheel on.
Yeah, before we torque it down, we can set it on to help with the timing.
See this annotation right here for our how to set Puch timing video.
Good flathead screws.
We meet again.
Or if you knew you had your timing perfect before you rebuilt it, you could have marked where exactly the stator's positioned.
If it's going to be a stock bike forever,
Yeah.
something like that.
But we're going to just set the timing here. You tighten these down all the way if you're good with where your timing's at, but I'll leave these a little loose so we can move the stator around. Where's the woodruff key? There it is. I hate flywheels because they're magnetic and they stick to everything.
Piston stop still in?
Yep.
Okay.
Alright. So where's those marks he made? We might have lost them. No, they're there. Okay.
Alright, so now since the timing's done, we'll go ahead and refer to our video again for that. It's very important. Go ahead and put the flywheel on.
We're going to tighten that down now. Instead of just leaving it able to pull on and off to do the timing.
Flywheel nut.
Yep.
Which you'll need the piston stop again in order to tighten down.
And this is a nice flange nut, so you don't need a washer. There it is.
Cool. Flywheel cover goes back on, and remember you've got 2 flathead screws for this one. So, kind of work all your wires through here, and then you just push this rubber stopper back where it came from. And finally, to return this the way it was, spark plug goes back in.
Take your piston stop out first.
Yes, it won't run so well with that. That's probably good.
Yeah.
Okay, YouTube, well, obviously there's the intake and the studs for the intake and exhaust and a few other small things, but for the most part, that's what I wanted to show you. Okay, YouTube, well, until next time.